Okay, this is John Black, Super Chemist. We're on almost the last step right before harvest. We have to fruit our mycelium. Now let's do a little review. First of all, we have a still air box that we made. It's about a 50-quart plastic clothespin, and we cut 2 holes in them, big enough to get our hands through. And then we got a piece of wood a little bit bigger than the hole, 1/2 inch thick. We drilled the same size hole as we did in the clothespin. We put 1 piece of wood on the inside of the clothespin, 1 piece on the outside, and then you drill little tiny holes for bolts and nuts in the corners of the wood, and you bolt and nut the 2 pieces of wood together with the plastic in between, sandwiched in between. And you get a little 3-inch or something like that PVC pipe or any kind of pipe. It will slide right in there snugly into the hole, and then you put your glove onto the pipe either on the inside or pull the glove through the pipe and wrap it around the outside. And you can gum band it or get one of those car type pipe clamps, or you get a screwdriver to tighten it up, or tape it or glue it, whatever. But when you get done, you put silicone caulking around all the places where the wood meets the plastic and the wood meets the pipe, and etc., etc., to make it all airtight. And you're going to have a gasket on the lid of your clothespin. That way, when you do anything inside this steel air box, you can clean it first, and then it'll be nice and sanitized. That's where you do your agar. You pour it into your plates. And then you'd have a second steel air box. This one doesn't have any holes cut for your hands to go through. They have holes so that you can have air exchange. And then you put some micro 4 tape over the holes so contamination can't get in, but there is air exchange. And then after you grew your mycelium out and had enough that you wanted to spawn it into jars, you would get your jars that were sterilized, put them into the steel air box, get your plates out, put them into the steel air box, clean everything down, and transfer your mycelium into the jars. When you were done, you close all the lids up and put your jars into this thing here again that you're cleaning down, once in a while. Put your jars in there, open them up a little bit, put your lid back on that has a gasket, and just let them sit there. Now, if you're smart, or I should say if you can afford it, really, this second box, you would also have 2 holes and do the same setup with the gloves and the pipe, so that when you put the spawn in, right, the jars you're done spawning your grain. The jars are closed. You put them in the box. Before you unscrew the lid, you put the lid of the big bin on with the gasket. You put your hands through the pipe and the glove, and you start cleaning and sanitizing this entire box. And then you can unscrew your grains. And that way, when you need to shake your grains, you don't take them out of the box. You just put your hands through those 2 holes you made with the gloves. You pick them up, you shake them. You want to inspect them, you can use your gloves. You don't have to open the box, right? And what I'm going to do for each one of these boxes, if I have this many, is I'm going to cut a hole on the top and the lid. I'm going to glue a piece of glass to it because I'm blind. So I need crystal clarity when I look at something. That way I can literally see stuff, you know what I mean? Imagine a glass, put over top there. You could really see into the steel air box and this. And when you're ready to fruit, right, when these jars are all big blocks of white mycelium and you can barely see any grain at all, if any at all, it's time to fruit it. Now you'll need a 3rd box, okay? You don't have to be, this is just if you want a 100% chance of not, not 100%, but if you want like a 99% chance of not getting any contamination, you want to put 1 hole in this so that you can do the glove thing, right, with the wood. And then put other holes around so that you can put microport tape on it, like this one. So it's like a combo of both of these, okay? And this is where you will leave your fruiting bins, because you're going to have 6-quart plastic shoe bins that you will be sticking in these big 54-quart bigger bins. Now let's go over how you do the fruiting, okay? Now I'm using 1-pint jars, which is 2 cups. A pint is a half a quart, so 2 of these would be a quart, right? But I'm only going to fill mine up to 1.5 cups, which is about up to here. If you don't have, like this doesn't have any markings on it, you can always get a measuring cup and measure out 1.5 cups of water to see where it goes up to. I think it goes up to about right here. So anyways, remember, we didn't fill up our spawn jars. We only filled them up like 75%, about 1.5 cups. So each one of these little pint jars is filled up with about 1.5 cups of spawn / grain. So 3 jars equals 1 quart and 1/2 cup. And 1/2 cup is nothing. Like 1/2 cup is down to here, like, you know what I mean? So 3 jars is slightly more than a quart, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to mix our spawn with some soil, some casing soil, which I showed how to make in another video, in a previous video. I'm going to take all our jars of spawn and all our jars of soil, casing soil. We're going to put it into the first still air box, right? And we're going to put 2 bins, one 6-quart bin and another bin that's a 6-quart bin, plus their lids. And everything we need we'll put in here, and then we'll wipe everything down so it's sanitized. And then we can work. Now before you put your casing soil into the 6-quart box, you're going to want to get a garbage bag, right, the smaller size garbage bag. Just unfold it so it's flat. It's 2-ply at that point. And just put it on top of your 6-quart thing and push down in the corners so that you make like a cup out of it. You know what I mean? You're making a liner for the box, right? Then the weight of the casing soil and everything will move the bag so that it contours to the bin itself. And then when you get done filling it up, you cut the excess plastic off of the, around, so it's not sticking up out of there. The reason why you use a double ply is because the outside liner will get stuck to the quart bin box, and the inside ply will get stuck to the mycelium, okay? And if you don't do this, what will happen is you'll have pinning on the sides. Light will get in there, and because the mycelium shrinks, you'll have a tiny little space there, and it'll be the right conditions to start mushrooming. You might think that's great, but they never come out good because there's not much space in between that crack, in between the mycelium and the bin. And all it does is waste energy that can be put towards the mushrooms that are growing up and growing right. Okay, now what I did was I got a 6-quart plastic shoebox bin, and I just filled these things up with, a cup and a half of water, and I just kept dumping them into the jar until I could see how much actually I really wanted. These bins are 4.5 inches tall, okay? Or at least mine are. 4.5 inches. I want my casing soil to between 2 and 4 inches, and I don't want it 2. That's what books tell you. But what you don't understand is when they're saying that, they're talking about this in-between part. They're not talking about all of it. So you want all of it to be at least 3 inches, 3 to 4 inches, all right? They usually say 1/4 to 1/2 inch, 2 to 4 inches, then another 1/4 to 1/2 inch for your top casing layer. Basically what you want to do is you want to have stuff that's nutritious for the fungus but resistant to mold and bacteria on the top and the bottom layer. So it's like a blanket, right? Now, if you noticed in my last video with how to make casing soil, I gave these two recipes. And what I'm going to do, I finally decided, this one has a lot more vermiculite. So I don't really like it for the in-between sandwich part. But I do like it for the outside parts. So I'm going to use this recipe as the casing soil on the top and the bottom. And when you put the bottom casing soil on, you just want to put enough on so that you can't see the bottom. Once you can't see the bottom, that's enough. And I got 1 jar, cup and a half of water, and I poured it into the 6-quart bin, and it does fill it up perfectly. So 1 jar is good enough for the bottom and the top, because when you put your top part on over top of the spawn, you want just enough to cover it up and see no white mycelium, no grain, just enough, like 1/4 inch. And that is another jar. Okay, I filled it all the way up to, remember this is a 4.5 inch bin, so I filled it up to 3.5 inches with water, and that's about where, and that leaves me with an inch on top, right? You want between 1 inch and 1.5 inches, okay, of empty space, okay, because we're going to put the lid on this, and we need some space for some air to be in there for your stuff to breathe, for your mycelium to breathe. So this brings it up actually to 3.5 inches, but when you compress it, so after you get all your jars in there, you're going to want to compress it slightly, not, you want it to be able to aerate. So you compress it a little bit, and keep in mind, this is just a guess, but I'm guessing if you compress this down, you're going to compress it down at least 1/4 inch, right? So instead of 3.5 inches of soil and 1 inch of empty space, you should have 3.25, or 3.25 inches of soil and 1.25 inches of empty space, and that's perfect right there. Now, what are we going to do for our middle layer? Okay, first of all, I filled up this with water up all the way, like I said, to 3.5 inches. Took 11 jars, okay, each jar being 1.5 cups, okay. So 1 jar is on the top casing layer, 1 jar is on the bottom casing layer. That leaves 9 jars left, okay, for the middle, right? The middle, I'm going to put 5 jars of spawn, okay, and I'm going to put 4 jars of soil, all right. Now, 5 out of 11, that's slightly above a 1-to-1 ratio. 5 to 4, that's actually even more than a 1-to-1 ratio. You want it to be your spawn to soil 1-to-2 ratio, or if you want to do a quick 1-to-1 ratio. Why am I doing the 1-to-1 ratio? Because this is the worst step. This is the step where you're going to get contamination, okay? So you want it to be quick. And if you have the spawn growing in the grain more, you know what I mean, and then you put it into this casing soil, you have less chance of contamination, okay? It'll grow through this stuff fast, putting a 1-to-1 ratio. So that's what I'm going to do. Now these 4 soil jars, right, that I'm going to mix, that's why I said you need to put 2 bins, 2 6-quart bins into your big steel-ware box. Because what you're going to do first, you're going to take one of those 6-quart bins, and you're going to get 2 jars of this formula here. I like this formula here. The other 2 jars will be this. And those jars of this stuff will be sterilized. And I went over what this is in my last video about how to make casing soil. And basically I will mix them together. The 2 jars of this, the 2 jars of the mushroom compost growing stuff that I just showed you in the bag, and 5 jars of spawn. And I will put them in this 6-quart thing, and I will, spawn is going to be like hard as a rock. I want to break it all up. I want to mix it all up nice and thoroughly.